Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Zach, and my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, as always, my friends. But today we got a couple things to talk about. First and foremost, Leonard Williams suffered a significant elbow injury, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL.com. Really bad news. I mean, the Giants season is pretty much lost. It is lost. Not even pretty much. It is gone. It's down the toilet, in the drain. It's over for them. They got Mike Glennon started at quarterback. Daniel Jones going to get a second opinion on his neck. They don't know whether it's nerve damage, if it's a bruised spinal cord. They don't know what's going on with him right now. End of the day, whenever you have a giraffe starting at quarterback, it definitely does not bode well for your chances to win games. And the Giants pretty much already have a guaranteed losing record this year. They've already pretty much waving the white flag. It's really just a race to see how fast they can finish off this season and look towards the NFL draft in 2022. But Leonard Williams never missed a single game due to injury in his entire career. Now, for the first time, he will miss probably the rest of the season with a significant elbow issue. He came back later on in the game after leaving the first half with a brace on, but he wasn't able to really maintain, his performance and keep going. So he didn't really make an impact in the second half for the most part. But Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend? And what do you have to think, or what are you thinking about this Leonard Williams injury?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I mean, this isn't one of the more damaging, losing Mondays because I expected this loss. I expected the Giants to lose quite terribly, and they lost pretty terribly. Didn't expect to lose Leonard Williams in that game, though. That's probably more disappointing of a loss than actually losing the game itself because, Leonard Williams was having a pretty solid year. No, it wasn't the same caliber that he was playing at last season, but he was still playing some pretty good football, still looked like at least somewhat of a stud. And, losing him for the rest of the year just kind of goes to show the Giants, the salary cap situation that they have, how poor it is, how, even your most surefire players that you spend your most possible amounts of money on, they could still get hurt and derail your season, as we've seen time and time again for the Giants this year. Kenny Galladay, now Leonard Williams. I mean, there's been plenty of injuries that the Giants have had to deal with their most expensive free agents. And it's just really been a bad luck year for the Giants. I mean, no, I don't think this team was talented enough, even if they had good luck to be a real contender. But they've had a lot of bad luck that have really just ruined all of their chances. And this is kind of just like the exclamation point at the end of the season. Here's your finisher of bad luck for Giants players and injuries. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Hopefully he's able to rest up, get healthy by the start of next season.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're just looking ahead to next season. But, of course, prayers up to Leonard Williams in the elbow injury. Hopefully he comes back fully healthy and strong, after signing a big $63 million over 3 seasons. The Giants do have an out in that contract after the second year, which will be about $8.4 million in dead cap. Definitely not ideal. The Giants kind of cash strapped, but that's what the next topic is what we're going to talk about. The next segment, rather, is how the Giants can open up $42 million specifically in cap space this upcoming season. I think New York Giants Daily on Twitter tweeted a little bit about how they can open up this money. We want to give our take on it, how they can actually do that, and what are the implications of it. The dead money, what would they be doing in terms of cutting, trading, what are the consequences of getting rid of some of these guys? And essentially, if the Giants do want to clear $42 million in cap space and really open up a little bit of a monetary, freedom, the first thing that they would have to do is cut James Bradberry. Now, Bradberry has had a down year by most accounts compared to his 2020 season. He's given up 8 touchdowns this year, maybe even more after the Chargers game. I'll have to give it a quick look. But ultimately, when your cornerback is not playing at the highest of levels, it definitely hurts him to a degree. Adoree Jackson can fill that number one corner role. I think they have a lot of promise in Aaron Robinson. They still have faith that, Rodarius Williams will make a comeback after the ACL tear this year. So maybe they'll invest another draft pick and a cornerback in the earlier portion of the draft. We will see. But James Bradberry, if you do cut him next year, it's going to cost you, right? Because ultimately, you're looking at 2022. James Bradberry, his cap pay is $21.8 million. And, if you cut him, it's $9.7 million in dead money. So, you average that out, it's about $12 million you're saving, $12.1 million you're saving, but you're getting hit by the massive almost $10 million cap hit. So you're really taking that, you're giving up James Bradberry, but you're saving the $12.1 million. Maybe you reallocate that money towards the offensive line. Maybe you go out and get a guard and a center with that money. You can probably afford to get an average level of guard and center with $12 million, in my opinion. But, Anthony, when you're thinking James Bradberry right off the bat, is that a player you're willing to give up? Is that a player you're like, yeah, like that makes sense. I'm willing to take on that big dead cap hit to clear up 12 million? Or are you like, that's just too much money? I think we should just leave him be.
It's not a move I necessarily want to make, but it is one that I could see the new general manager stepping in and saying that the Giants have to make. Because the Giants right now, where they stand, $3.5 million in cap space, ain't going to cut it. They're not even going to be able to sign their draft class with $3.5 million. The Giants have 11 draft picks going into this year's draft. Do I expect them to keep all 11? No, they'll probably trade at least one or two of those picks away. However, even if you're picking at least 7 players, you're talking about more than $3.5 million. Your first round pick, I mean, the Giants have 2 top 10 picks. Both of those picks alone are going to be about $8 million in cap space each. So the Giants are going to have to clear a significant amount of cap space if they want to have a draft class. If not, they're going to have to trade away all of their picks. So yeah, they have to free up some cap space somehow. And do I want them to cut James Bradberry? No, I love James Bradberry. I think he's an awesome player. Is he having a down year? Yes, unfortunately he is, but I still think that he's better than most cornerbacks in the NFL, and I think that a lot of it is due to other confounding variables. I don't think that he's necessarily the problem. I think, the Giants have a lot of problems with injuries in the secondary. The slot cornerback position has kind of been a revolving door for them this year. The pass rush has been really poor for most of the season, which makes things way tougher on a cornerback, especially James Bradberry or any cornerback for that matter. So when you're talking about James Bradberry and his performance, I don't blame his down year solely on him. But if they have to cut him, they got to do what they got to do because, like I said, they can't even afford a draft class. And not only can they not afford a draft class, if we are talking about making any improvements on the offensive line, like Alex just mentioned, maybe a real stud of a center or a right guard or left guard hits free agency, and the Giants, maybe he's connected to the Giants want him. They have no chance of getting him right now, not unless they free up a ton of cap space. And another thing to keep in mind, the Russell Wilson rumors. Yeah, he shot them down, but what else is he going to do? He's still playing for the Seahawks. What if he demands a trade in the offseason? He says, I want to go to the New York Giants. New general manager comes in, says, I want Russell Wilson on the Giants. Well, he's going to have to cut James Bradberry if he wants any shot of getting Russell Wilson. And like I said, I think they might just have to cut James Bradberry if they want any shot of keeping their 11 draft picks. It's plain and simple. The Giants have no money. They have to make some serious cuts. And James Bradberry, unfortunately, might be a major salary cap casualty. So, no, I don't want them to do it. I hope that they're able to figure something out. Maybe they can give him a contract extension. This will be the last year of his deal, so they can't restructure it. They have to extend him if they want to free some cap space and keep him on the team. Maybe they'll be able to work something out. But unfortunately, the way it looks right now, I would have to assume that James Bradberry is on his way out of New York.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you went out and signed Adoree Jackson for starting level money. I think you kind of pigeonholed yourself into this move. We'll see what happens. It's a long off season because who knows what goes on with Joe Judge? Who knows what goes on with the coaching staff? Obviously, Dave Gettleman seems like they're going to let him retire, which I think is a little bit too kind. I think they should fire his ass and shoot him to the sun via trebuchet. But that is that's my move. But the next player on this list, so James Bradberry, you saved 12.1 million. The next player is Blake Martinez. Now, I'd hate to get rid of Blake Martinez, one of our best run defenders. He's our best linebacker by far, way better than Bernard McKinney, way better than Tay Crowder, and way better than Reggie Ragland. Now, problem is Blake Martinez, another guy that kind of has some dead cap, right? So you cut him next offseason. You're taking on $5.5 million in dead money, and then there's a $14 million cap hit if you retain him. Now, an additional, maybe another way that we may be able to get around this is asking him to say, either we're going to cut you or we can restructure your contract and just tear it up and write up a new contract. You're coming off an ACL tear. There's nobody else that's going to be willing to pay you $14 million, and we don't want to pay you $14 million. So maybe they say, slash up the contract. We want to keep you. We really like you, especially if they retain Patrick Graham and Joe Judge, especially in that case. They say, Blake, no one's going to pay you $14 million. I don't even think anyone's going to pay you $10 million. So why don't we just tear up your contract now? We'll redo it. We'll give you a two-year deal at $15 million, right? So we're paying you $7 million. That way, we reduce that money, but we also don't, screw ourselves paying $14 million. So you really cut that number in half. Maybe that's something they do. Maybe that's something that he's willing to consider. If not, I do ultimately think that Blake Martinez is a cut candidate. $8.5 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of cash to go and spend elsewhere, specifically on the offensive line or a pass rusher. Think about the money that like guys like Hassan Reddick got. Very little amount of money, and he has double-digit sacks this year. There are a lot of players who the Giants just completely just disregarded, and now they beat the hell out of them. So, Blake Martinez, unfortunately, I think will have to be a guy that's either his contract's either torn up and redone, or you're just going to have to straight out cut him and eat the $5.5 million in dead money, and walk away with 8.5 mil and just kind of walk into the sunset with it. What are you thinking?
I think, again, similar situation to James Bradberry. I think you're completely right. And the number one thing that tells me that the Giants might have to move on from Blake Martinez is the fact that he's coming off of an injury. So we've seen this time and time again. I mean, everyone said Saquon Barkley, he's going to get injured. He's going to bounce right back, be the same player that he used to be, and return to form and have a historic comeback, maybe be a comeback player of the year. A lot of people thought he was going to be a comeback player of the year candidate. Saquon Barkley looks like a shell of his former self. And that goes to show that even the most freaky athletes, the most physical specimen that the Giants have on their roster, looks like a shell of his former self because of injuries just piling up. And now Blake Martinez tearing his ACL, who knows if he will look like his old self again? Who knows if he will be a shell or if he will be his former self? I don't know, and the Giants don't know either. So at this point, with this injury lining up with the out in his contract, they might just want to jump on it. You guys know this. I said this a couple episodes ago last week. I said the Giants roster right now looks like a gut job. It looks like they're going to have to cut pretty much everybody and just restart. And unfortunately for Blake Martinez, an amazing person, additionally to being a really awesome football player, it looks like he's probably on the chopping block, along with James Bradberry, another great person that's a great football player. All these guys that we're talking about might just have to go due to the fact that the Giants are probably going to have to hit the complete reset button. So for Blake Martinez, if it's going down to Blake Martinez or James Bradberry, pick one or the other, personally, might be a hot take. I'm going to probably choose to cut Blake Martinez instead. There's two reasons why. One, positional value. Cornerbacks are a little bit more important. They're harder to come by, and you have to have a really good cornerback to succeed in today's passing league. Second reason why is because of Blake Martinez's injury. I think it makes him a huge question mark. I think it's a giant confounding variable that tells you do not know what the future of his career will look like. So for that reason, the Giants should probably strongly consider moving on for Blake Martinez, collecting whatever cap space they can, and allocating it either towards their draft class or towards improvement along the offensive line or defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, look, like there's a lot of players are going to have to be on the way out after this season. I mean, I just don't even know how you sustain it. The injuries alone have been just demoralizing to a degree I can't even fathom. But, the thing that just continues to confuse me is how the Giants keep saying things and doing the exact opposite. Let's play the young guys. Matt Perp, screw you. Nate Solder, get the hell in there. You're 45 years old, can't walk, got a limp. They're tossing you aside with one hand. Joey Bosa teleported by you. I mean, the guy is so washed. It's unbelievable. Like I say all the time, not even the laundromat's going to take this man. So when I'm looking at the Giants now, they say things and do the opposite. Now, it's different if you're trying to confuse other teams. It's different if you're keeping an eye on the injury report because you don't want them to game plan. You want to have to game plan for somebody else, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But the fact that they're just spewing lies and bullshit to the fans, that's where things get a little etchy. And I'll tell you what, Joe Judge today justified, his job security with, we're making progress. We've established a culture, right? We're establishing a culture. Now, let me ask you this, Joe. What culture is consistently losing games? What kind of culture are you developing and brewing when your team is constantly losing? We need a winning culture. We need to know how to win games. We need to see how that feels. But no, the culture he's instituted, maybe the team is fighting, but they freaking blow. They suck. Okay, your team doesn't give up. They're fighting until the last minute. They still suck. They're garbage. I don't give a shit if they're fighting. They suck. Now, the injuries definitely played a big part in that. There's a lot of factors that negatively impacted this team, Anthony. But at the end of the day, he just spews shit, and it doesn't make any sense to me because it doesn't seem like he's backing up any of his words with action, and that's what I want to see at this point, legitimate action. Now, the next player on the list, aside from Blake Martinez, this guy is definitely going to get the axe, unfortunately, Sterling Shepard. They will save $4.5 million by cutting him, right? So next year, if they retain him, He's going to count $12.5 million in cap space. The guy's injured every single season. I can't bear to watch it anymore. Get his ass off the team. $4.5 million. You can get it. You can go get a receiver who will replicate his statistics and actually just stay healthy. Just stay healthy. That's all we need. So 4.5 million, you add all that up, you're looking at another couple of good players. You're looking like you can pay two guards starting level money. You're looking like you can pay an edge rusher starting level money, or you can go out and get a premium offensive tackle and a premium edge rusher with 20 million a piece, and then piece together everything else with the draft. Who knows what they're going to do, but those are just thoughts that are going through my head in terms of supplementing things. But Sterling Shepard, $4.5 million out of $12.5 million they would have to pay him otherwise. $8 million dead cap hit. Anthony, I imagine you're probably in the same boat. It's time to just move on at this point.
Yeah, and it sucks. Another great person and a great football player, and unfortunately, injuries seem to have derailed his career to some extent. Sterling Shepard looked like he was on track for a career year when the season started. We all thought he was going to be really good this year. We watched him in training camp and practice. Looked like a monster. Gets into the start of the regular season, still looks like a monster, playing really good football, then gets injured. Comes back to the field, doesn't look the same, injured again. Comes back to the field, barely even noticed him on the field yesterday against the Chargers. He was like non-existent into the Giants game plan. Injuries, man, they're piling up for some of these Giants players, and Sterling Shepard is unfortunately one of those players where they've just piled up, and it looks like he's done in New York. And it sucks. I really like Sterling Shepard. I want him to be around for the long haul. I want him to end his career as a New York Giant, but I just don't see it happening at this point. The Giants, again, strapped for cash, need some space, need to make some tough decisions, need to make some tough cuts, and I think that Sterling Shepard is arguably the strongest cut candidate. The Giants do have, when they're healthy, some depth at wide receiver. They've got Kadarius Toney in the fold. That can be their new slot/outside receiver once he starts putting on some muscle. And, once he's healthy, he's not even healthy, but once he is, he probably takes over Sterling Shepard's role. Hopefully, new offensive coordinator knows how to get the most out of him. Hopefully, maybe a new quarterback at some point within the next 2 years can come in here, throw the ball to Kadarius Toney efficiently, and you can have Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, and that can be your receiving duo. You don't necessarily need Sterling Shepard anymore. You would like to have him, but you can also find very good slot receivers or receivers of that playing style that Sterling Shepard possesses in the middle rounds of the draft. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions right now. Looks like a very good player. I always thought he was going to be a very good player. I even actually compared him to Sterling Shepard when I did a film breakdown of him on this channel, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, those third-round wide receivers in the recent years, there has been so much wide receiver talent in the most recent drafts that wide receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown in the third rounds, those guys are hits more often than not, and they look like very good players, and he looks like that specific player could have easily replicated what Sterling Shepard did this year, except for the fact that he stayed healthy, so he did more than Sterling Shepard did. So the Giants could go into this next year's draft, 11 draft picks, and say, we're going to cut Sterling Shepard, find his replacement in the middle rounds, and they have a very high chance of doing that because wide receivers like that aren't that hard to find anymore. So for Sterling Shepard, I think he's a huge cut candidate, and if I were sitting in the chair as the Giants general manager, I'm probably pulling the trigger on that one and letting Sterling Shepard go.
I just hope to the good lords that they find a good offensive coordinator candidate, and they're like, we got Kenny Golladay. We're investing heavily in our offensive line. We have Kadarius Toney. We're going to invest more in some playmakers. Hopefully, in the mid rounds, we can get a guy like you just mentioned, maybe a third-round pick to replace Sterling Shepard there, a fourth rounder, who knows. But you still got Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney. Those are two players you could absolutely work around, right? Good offensive line. Those guys, maybe if they decide they want to keep Saquon Barkley, that's another weapon that you have to work around. But that's another player that we're going to talk about in a second who's involved in this list. But let's go down the list one more time. So James Bradberry, $12.1 million. Blake Martinez, $8.5. Sterling Shepard, $4.5. So we're already about at $25 million in open space. Now, Kyle Rudolph, he's pretty much guaranteed gone. The guy is slow as molasses. He had a 60-yard reception against the Chargers, but that was his most electrifying play of the game. It looked like the guy who had literally had rocks tied to his feet. He was running so slow. I don't understand how they didn't catch up to him sooner. But I mean, he's useless at this point. We don't get to the red zone enough to even factor him in as a red zone option. So let's miss me with that and cut him for the $5 million. And Riley Dixon, God forbid, I watch another punt from that guy. He threw that ball out of bounds further than any of his punts went yesterday. So I'll tell you what, that's $8.25 million right off the bat, Anthony. And then Devontae Booker. I actually think they should keep Devontae Booker and make him the starter. I like him. I think that Saquon Barkley should be traded. But at this point, I actually like Devontae Booker, $2 million. Keep him, make him your starter. That's really cheap for a starting running back. And ultimately, he's a hard runner. He's a tough runner. He's not going to be a home run hitter, but all you really want from him is a downhill physical guy who's going to churn out yards. I think he can do that as a stopgap for 1 year. I'm more than happy giving him that role, and finding another guy, maybe a cheaper option. Maybe bring back Wayne Gallman. That guy ran with some purpose. Anthony, so what do you think about Kyle Rudolph, Riley Dixon, and Devontae Booker?
Yeah, Riley Dixon, get him out of here. Like, he should be cut today. I don't even think he holds a place on this team right now. Like, seriously, he has not been good this year. And considering how conservative the Giants are, how frequently Joe Judge loves to punt on 4th and short to try and win the field positioning, and how frequently they lose the field positioning because of those bad punts going in the end zone, Riley Dixon is going to be cut by the end of the year. I can almost guarantee that. If he's on the roster next year, prepare for more bad field positioning that puts the Giants defense in horrible positions, because that is what we've gotten with Riley Dixon at punter all year long, especially with Joe Judge as the conservative head coach that we have. Kyle Rudolph, I think that he might be worth keeping around. That might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but I like Kyle Rudolph. I think that when he's healthy, he does play pretty good. You have to keep in mind the first half of the year he was dealing with an injury. Second half of the year, he's looked like the best tight end on our roster, in my opinion. He's played better than Evan Engram in my eyes, personally. I think that he looks like the better tight end on our roster. And if he were healthy for the full season and the Giants actually knew how to scheme together passing concepts, I think that Kyle Rudolph could have had a much better year than he had. Plus, I think that his performance as of late has been pretty adequate. So I like Kyle Rudolph. I don't think he's super expensive to the point where you got to get rid of him. So I think that he might be worth keeping around. The last name you mentioned, Devontae Booker, I agree with you. Trade Saquon Barkley. It's probably time. You can't cut him because then you'll incur the entire salary that he has as dead cap. But if you do trade him somehow, some way, if they find any taker under the sun to trade for him, they should. They should just do it. At this point, let him restart somewhere else. Maybe he needs a new environment, a fresh start at another team. I think that would be great for Saquon Barkley. I think that would be great for the Giants to free up some cap space, $7 million in trading Saquon Barkley, and just restart that running back position. And I agree with you, Devontae Booker. He's good enough to be a starting level running back in this league. You do not need elite running backs to be a good team. Do the Buccaneers have an elite running back? Do the Bills have an elite running back? Not many of these teams have elite running backs. Those top teams. No, the Chiefs don't have an elite running back either. Best teams in the league usually don't, because you don't need them. What you really need is an elite quarterback, more often than not, an elite offensive line. Look at the Bucs offensive line. Chiefs rebuilt their offensive line overnight, have some of the best
Jonathan
interior
Taylor
offensive
is a
linemen
second rounder.
Jonathan Taylor is a second round pick. That's a great point. Great point. And so he's not even getting paid a lot because he's not even on his second contract yet. So many running backs that you can find in the middle rounds that are so good. I mean, Alvin Kamara was what, a 4th round pick, I believe? Alvin Kamara? Yeah,
I
now he
loved him
gets
out of
paid. He
Tennessee, for
gets
the
paid a
record.
lot. Yeah, and that was a good call there. A lot of people really liked him because he's just explosive and a great receiver out of the backfield. Now look at him. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL. He is elite. No, that hasn't produced a Super Bowl for the Saints. They got pretty close last year. But ultimately, you can find good running backs in the middle rounds. And Devontae Booker for $2 million, adequate enough to be a starter, in my opinion.
You know what makes players even better? Actually building a scheme that helps them promote their strengths. Saquon Barkley has been stifled because our coordinators, they plucked these guys out of a freaking shelter somewhere. I don't know what they were doing. They were picking in the dirt. They were looking for hot dogs or something. I don't know what the hell these guys were doing when they found them. But for goodness sakes, the lack of competence from these offensive coordinators, the failure to call plays, to design plays that maximize your players' talents. I mean, Kenny Galladay, guy hasn't been given any opportunities for 50-50 balls downfield, maybe one or two this year. I can't recall. And ultimately, you're looking at, Saquon Barkley. He's not an inside zone runner. He's not the type of runner you want running into the back of Billy Price every play. Even before this season, they never utilized him properly. They never used him how he was supposed to be used. And then you look at Alvin Kamara. They use him outside zone. They do so many unique things. They use him as a receiving back. Look at Derrick Henry. They know exactly. They use those power gap schemes, and they just freaking run him behind those big guards in Tennessee. And they absolutely expose Jonathan Taylor. I mean, they just run him behind Quentin Nelson. Having an elite guard is really underrated. A lot of people say you don't need to have elite guards. If you want a good running game, you do need to have a good guard, at least one good guard. Look, Quentin Nelson being obviously one of them. There's so many good teams, like good running teams. Like Zach Martin, for example. you just run their way. They're going to hit every single time on their block. They're going to disengage. They're going to get to the second level. They're going to open up a huge lane. Like 50% of the time, that's all you need to have a successful running game. So, if the Giants could go out in the second round and find themselves a big offensive lineman who has a lot of potential, maybe they can walk away with it. I mean, I know, Anthony, you'll probably be like, that's the Tyler Linderbaum, kind of justification. That's why we should draft him, because he's a hog molly. I don't even want to say hog molly anymore. I just want to forget about Dave Gettleman entirely. He's a good offensive lineman. He's fast. He's athletic. He can get to the second level. He's strong as hell. And that's a player you want, out of Iowa center. Maybe you want him manning that spot there. He can really help those other guards and the rest of the offensive line play at a better level. The communication there too. So, ultimately, Saquon Barkley has not been used properly, but it's too late for him, right? It's too late. If the Giants do trade him, they can clear up about $7.2 million by trading him. The question is, who the hell wants him? Who the hell wants the second highest paid running back in football, who's coming off an ACL tear, who hasn't had a successful season since his rookie year in 2018? The Giants are going to have to give away a draft pick just to get rid of him. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to have to send other players along with them. It's going to be a salary dump, basically, right? Like, the Giants are going to be like, maybe they'll look at the Houston Texans and say, hey, take this guy on. We just going to salary dump him, and we'll give you like a late round pick just for the money, just to take on the money. Cause we know you're not going to be competing anytime soon. You're rebuilding. Maybe look at Jacksonville. I know they got Etienne coming back. So they probably wouldn't want to use a guy like Saquon. But maybe Houston would look like to do that. Maybe the Bears would want to do that, because they got Justin Fields now, and they don't really have David Montgomery, but he's not like an elite back by any means. So who knows? Maybe a young team with a young quarterback is like, let's go get Saquon. He's a veteran. He wants to restart, and maybe we can, do something with him there. So that's what I'm looking at. The Giants really have a tough situation. Maybe they execute a trade on a grander scale. Maybe they look to, trade back in the first round and send Saquon Barkley with the draft pick or something like that. It could be a draft day move for all we know. Who knows? So ultimately, ideally, in my opinion, Saquon Barkley should be traded. $7.2 million is way too much for a running back. And at this point in time, it is not worth it, guys. It's just not worth it. He has an ankle injury, coming back from an ACL tear every single year. It's something else. And I don't want to be here. I don't want to be around for it any longer. It's time to just move on, take the hit. And just let him walk into the sunset with Dave Gettleman at this point, Anthony. I mean, I know you just touched on it, but do you think that's the right move? Like, just, finding a team to just trade him? It could be a draft day type of situation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I agree with you. I think that's the route that the Giants should take. Salary dump, get rid of Saquon Barkley's contract, let him start fresh somewhere else, and just go from there. Just restart. He shouldn't have been a Giant. The Giants shouldn't have drafted him with the second overall pick. I think pretty much all Giants fans can agree with that at this point. I know he's an awesome person, an awesome player. I loved watching him play in 2018 when he was healthy and good, but he has not been that player since 2018. And 2 years now where he just hasn't been that player. 3 almost, really. I mean, it's just time to move on, unfortunately, cut your losses and restart. And a new general manager, I believe, will step in here and feel the same way, and we'll just restart. Find a new running back that's way cheaper and start building this team through the draft. Do it the proper way, outside or inside out, go through the trenches, and then start getting your skill position players. The Giants luckily have some pretty good skill position players, but Dave Gettleman made the promise to fix the offensive line, find the hog mollies. But what did he actually do? He built outside in. He got the skill position players and never fixed the offensive line. New general manager needs to step in here and do it the other way around. Fix the offensive line, then bolster up the skill position players, and then we will see the Giants finally become a competent team. Might take a couple of years, but hopefully they could figure it out and get that done. New general manager is going to have some tough decisions to make. Of course, Saquon Barkley, very popular amongst the fan base, sells a lot of jerseys. Not going to be an easy move to make, but it might be the necessary move for the Giants to make in order to get this team back on track.
I'd be a lot less surprised about Saquon Barkley being traded than Odell Beckham Jr. I'll tell you that right now. So at the same time, it's just time to move on from some of the things that Dave Gettleman did. I think they just need a clean break. They need a restart. And I think that, moving on from Saquon kind of indicates that that's the direction they're going in. But again, I don't trust Joe Judge anymore. Everything he says, I don't care what you say, bro. I want to see action. I want to see you actually do what you're saying. Most of all, don't tell me you have established a culture when you haven't won any games that are actually meaningful. Don't tell me, and don't lie to the fan base saying that you're establishing something, you're making progress with the culture when you're not a winning team. Because to me, if you're not winning, That culture is a load of shit. You don't have anything to stand on. You have no foundation. He says we have young guys turning a corner. Who is that exactly? Is that Azeez Ojulari, Andrew Thomas? I mean, yes, I'd say McKinney and Andrew Thomas, two guys that are turning a corner, and really making an impact on this team. Azeez Ojulari, I have high hopes for, but I'm not going to say he's going to be a great player just yet. I think he will. But he's had some inconsistencies this year for at times, and that's no question. But end of the day, there's not enough young guys taking that turn that Joe Judge indicated today to make me think that this team is headed toward a winning. If the players he was mentioning were the left tackle, right tackle, and quarterback, I'd feel damn good. But it's not. It simply isn't. It's the left tackle, but it's definitely not the right tackle. And I don't think it's the quarterback because Daniel Jones has been injured. He's out now. Who knows what happens there? The time is running out. The contract situation, the fifth-year option, it's coming. It's coming fast. And who knows what the Giants are going to do with that. But guys, really appreciate you tuning in to this latest episode with us, breaking down some cap situations, how the Giants can open up some money to maybe go out and sign some players. The cap is more or less a myth at this point. As we see, the Saints are like negative $50 million in cap space, but somehow they manage to get over it every single year. So I think the Giants can do the same. They do have $3.5 million, but as you can see, we can open up about $50 million, $45 million here to kick things down the road and really get going. And hopefully those contracts in a year with the outs, because Dave Gettleman really set up these contracts to end after Daniel Jones's rookie season. We can move on from those big deals and really hit the restart button and have some good pieces in place, some young guys that you can pay that are actually worth paying. But hopefully you guys enjoy. Make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.